In the next several videos, we'll be taking a look at the 5-day forecast fragment and the read 5-day forecast task. Now, many of the concepts that we'll look at in those two classes are the same as what we presented in the single forecast fragment and in the read forecast task classes. So this will be a bit of review, and we'll also introduce a couple of new features as well. Now, for the 5-day forecast fragment, we're actually displaying 5 days of weather information. So here you can see the 5-day forecast on the screen in landscape view. And as you can see, it's a pretty tightly packed layout as it is going from left to right. Clearly there's not a lot of room there if we switch this to portrait view to fit 5 days of information left to right across the screen. So one of the things we're going to do a bit differently in the 5-day forecast fragment is we're going to use different layouts for the individual days forecasts in the case where we're in portrait view versus landscape view. So you can see over here in our layout folder that we actually have a couple of different XML files here. We have single forecast layout for landscape mode, and we have single forecast layout for portrait mode, and depending on the current screen orientation, we use one or the other for the individual daily forecasts. So let's go back over to our emulator here, and I'm running on Windows, and in Windows you can hit Control F11 to rotate the emulator from landscape to portrait mode. So let me go ahead and do that. I believe it's Command F11 on a Macintosh. And what you can see here after it loads the weather forecast once again is that now the 5-day forecast is oriented vertically down the screen with the weather image on the left side of each daily forecast, and then the data to the right side of the image arranged vertically in a wider text view, if you will. And if I switch back over to horizontal, it'll take a moment to rotate, and then in this view we can see that the images are at the top of the individual daily forecast, and then the same textual information is displayed vertically underneath that as well. So we just have a couple of different layouts to deal with here. Now, going back over to the 5-day forecast fragment class, a couple of the key things that we have here are the fact that we're importing our own interfaces from the read 5-day forecast task class and the read location task class. We've already looked at read location task previously, and for each of these we've got listeners that enable us to respond when each of the tasks finishes its job. So when the read location task finishes its job, it will notify its location loaded listener, and when the read 5-day forecast task finishes its job, it will notify its 5-day forecast loaded listener. Now, as for the class definition itself, once again we extend forecast fragment just as we had done in the single forecast fragment class. And we've got a few different instance variables and static variables here. The zip code key we use to store the zip code when we need to. The number of daily forecasts that will be displayed is 5. And then we have the zip code string, which represents the zip code for which we'll load the 5-day forecast. And we have an array of views that will represent the individual daily forecasts, and we will fill this array of views based on whether we're in the landscape or portrait orientation at a given time. And then finally we have a text view where we display the location information.